is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft beer and craft chocolate. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional beer writer and an advanced cicerone, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or at her website, annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Porters and Stouts are the first beer styles many people think of when they're looking to pair with chocolate. If you go online and find any kind of basic guidance on pairing beer and chocolate, chances are you're going to see Porter and Stout styles recommended. The styles are dark in color and feature various roasty flavors and aromas from the presence of roasted malts and roasted grains. These malts are roasted similar to how coffee beans and cacao beans get roasted and take on many of the same flavor notes. Coffee and chocolate are two common flavor descriptors that you'll see mentioned with porters and stouts, but also dark or burnt caramel, dark toast, all sorts of different things might pop up. There are dozens of porter and stout styles, and most of them can pair very well with chocolate, but today I want to look at standard strength porters and stouts. These styles in the 4.5 to 6.5% alcohol range include American Porter, English Porter, Oatmeal Stout, Milk Stout, Irish Stout, and some American Stouts. They all have origins originally tracing back to the British Isles. Some are brewed by U.S. breweries in their classic form, and some have been adapted into uniquely American styles on their own. But despite differences between these individual styles, they follow similar pairing guidelines when you're looking at pairing them with chocolate. Some examples show a touch of sweetness. The specific roast flavors will vary, and individual examples differ in their intensity of hop aroma and hop bitterness. Despite these differences, most beers in these styles will cast a pretty wide net in pairing situations and can work solidly with a wide range of chocolates, making them good to have on hand for impromptu pairings. The trick here is transcending the good pairings to find the great ones. There's a reason you see these beers listed in those simple pairing guides online, because they're going to work fairly well with a lot of different things, but we want to go beyond that and find truly great pairings. So let's talk about how to pair them with chocolate. Before we look at specific pairing advice for these standard strength porter and stout styles, let's get a few exceptions out of the way. I mentioned Irish stouts. They tend to be quite dry, and some examples have a fairly high level of bitterness that can make them difficult to pair with chocolate. If you run across an example with elevated bitterness, it will likely not make a great chocolate pairing beer. We will talk separately in a different episode about stronger porter and stout styles. There are some stronger examples of American Stout that align more with the guidance for those stronger porters and stouts, so we'll be posting about that at a separate time. And finally, some American porters are quite hoppy and really lean more in the direction of how I would recommend pairing guidance for black IPAs. So I do have a blog post up on beantobarstool.com giving guidance for hoppy dark beers. So if you have an American porter that has a strong hop presence, I would recommend looking there for pairing guidance. So let's talk about pairing standard strength porters and stouts with chocolate. While the roast profiles of these beers will bridge to a wide variety of chocolates, the varying levels of roast intensity, dryness, and hop bitterness can make dialing these in kind of a case-by-case issue. Also, because we're used to associating flavors like chocolate, coffee, and caramel with sweetness, it can be difficult to gauge exactly how sweet these beers really are, something that kind of takes practice. Seek out single origin dark chocolate bars in the 65 to 75% cacao range, particularly those with a classic chocolatey, nutty, and or caramel forward profile, like many of the bars that you would get from Ghana, for example. While pairing these beers with these bars won't necessarily be mind-blowing, it will result in familiar, comforting, and easy combinations. Also, look for milk or dark bars with coconut, maple, nut, berry, or salted caramel inclusions, all of which work well with underlying chocolate-like notes in these beers. I would stay away from high percentage dark chocolate bars, most fruit inclusions, bold herb or spice inclusions, and anything boldly acidic. All of these bars have characteristics that can cause harsh bitterness with the dry bodies, roast flavors, and hop bitterness possible in these styles. Let's look at a couple quick examples. Great Lakes Edmund Fitzgerald Porter from Cleveland, Ohio, and New Holland The Poet Oatmeal Stout from Holland, Michigan have their differences. The Porter has a drier body and a little bit higher hop bitterness. The Oatmeal Stout has a little bit more milk chocolate-like foundation from the roasted malt and lower bitterness. But both pair really wonderfully with the same bar, Chocolatl Spooky Mermaids, a 60% bar from Atlanta made with coconut milk and sea salt, and it's a seasonal bar, so I need to check, but I believe it may be out right now. The coconut in the bar pulls forward the chocolate notes in both beers, and the creamy mouthfeel kind of tames some of the hop bitterness in the porter. They're both very simple pairings, but delightful. So it could be fun to get a few different porters and stouts and try it with a similar bar like this to see which one you like best. I want to share one more example that is unfortunately not possible to actually pull off right now because the beer is retired and the chocolate maker is no longer producing chocolate. But I have to share it because it is the pairing that first really just knocked me over with how beautifully beer and chocolate could pair together. They're both retired, but the memory of this pairing really lives on for me. Ommegang's Beekman 1802 Goat Milk Stout from New York had aromas of milk chocolate and coffee with cream and an underlying warmth that brought to mind flannel and hay. It felt like the perfect fall stout, if that makes sense. There was a gentle sweetness, just kind of a whisper of like warm, comforting earthiness from the goat milk. I paired it with the Salty Cow from Patrick, a 58% dark milk bar with crunchy sea salt. It was luxuriously smooth with its own like subtle earthy funk from that salt. And together they were just the most like cozy, rustic pairing. Would have made the most perfect pairing for like a contemplative fall hayride. I wish both of these were still around because they were just beautiful together. The versatility of beers in these standard strength porter and stout styles makes them great to have on hand for pairings and good choices if you're hosting friends for an in-home beer and chocolate pairing. If you don't have specific courses planned, one of these styles will work well with a number of different bars and allow your guests to find some easy combinations, even if they aren't the single most memorable pairings of the event. If you have your own favorite standard strength porter and stout chocolate pairings, please let me know on social media. You can also go to beantobarstool.com and find other guides for specific beer styles with chocolate. And of course, you can always order my book, Pairing Beer and Chocolate, from beantobarstool.com, Amazon, or ask your favorite independent bookseller to order it for you. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of Bean to Barstool. Thanks for listening.